All right. So, take two. This is my friend Dawn Hehr. We've had conversations in the past, and she wants to talk about some interesting ideas she has concerning the dawning of the Age of Aquarius and a particular portal that's opening up on, if I remember correctly, December 21st.
That's correct.
All right. Well, Dawn, how are you doing anyway?
I'm doing fantastic. Just trying to help a lot of people kind of stay grounded and keep their peace. Super high energy with this full moon in Gemini, which is, an air sign. So a lot of people are having, a lot of carried away thoughts, and it's really hard for them to stay grounded at this time. So between that and our lunar eclipse that we just went through at the same time, is really pushing us forward to do some amazing things in our life. So I'm
All right.
excited about what's to come here on the 21st. And yeah, let's talk about this.
Now, tell me specifically why December 21st?
um, if you look at it, there is 12, 2, 1, and then we have 2, 0, 2, 0. And if you think about synchronicities, there's a lot of twos, and twos talk about support. They talk about, I would say, interjecting ourselves into a more positive space, knowing that good is coming. And if you get these synchronicities that are 222, 333, 444, they actually have meaning. And so the reason why, I guess, is that 222 portal that's on the 21st is going to really make way for what we've been talking about since the 60s, which is the Age of Aquarius.
You
So
know,
it's
Fifth Dimension already called all this. We know that song. I was actually watching that video just a few weeks ago and was
uh-huh,
marveling at, here it was, what, like 68, 69. They did that song somewhere in there. And
right.
it's
It
funny
was in the
how,
60s.
and the funny thing to me is that they're talking about all this stuff that seemed to go all haywire and, just be sort of a relic of the hippie age, but that we're
Right,
really thinking in terms of human years, not celestial or, longer time spans. So really,
right.
30 years passing, 40 years passing is really just a drop in the bucket. So that age of Aquarius was something that's happening right now. It wasn't something in the future. It just seemed long term to us because we live short lives.
Right, definitely. And I don't really think, Ralph, that they knew what they were really talking about. And it's funny, if you ask people about that song, everybody can sing it, right? Everybody knows like the words. And I mean, I even asked my mom the other day, I said, we're at the dawning of the Age of Aquarius. And she said, oh, that was in the 60s. And I said, yeah, but it's actually now. And she said, well, we didn't know that back then, but I think that song really reflected a lot of energy surrounding freedom. And so in the 60s, that's what they were talking about. I say they were burning things that they shouldn't have. And they were, really enlightening their mental state with all the drugs and all of the live free or die kind of energy, surrounding the hippie era of the 60s.
Uh-huh.
And so now we're kind of going back into that. And a lot of those people from that era, they're a lot older, and they are initiating a lot of the support around moving forward in that Age of Aquarius. And so Aquarius is really all about freedom. It's all about going with the flow of things. And so what's interesting about the 21st is that Saturn and Jupiter conjunct at 0 degrees in Aquarius, which is something really unheard of astrologically. So this is a very huge paramount time for us all to be living in, because this is really reflective of that community energy that they were talking about with that song from the 60s. Now we're actually starting to feel what it feels like, to take that initiative in our lives and create freedom around ourselves instead of all this constriction and blocking ourselves from positivity and things like that due to our circumstances.
Right.
So it's a real remarkable time. And I've been telling a lot of people about it, because they're like, what is this Age of Aquarius? Like, what are you talking about? And I'm talking about freedom. I'm talking about us internally freeing ourselves, because this is the time where we become the gurus instead of seeking out these gurus. In some of my classes that I teach, I sit back and I always say, thank you for showing up as a master, because we're all mastering our lives right now in this freedom energy. And so it seems kind of funny for me to talk about freedom when we're in the second bout of COVID. But there is some delight to be had here. And as long as we keep our peace within, we will recognize that there are avenues that are opening up for us to really free ourselves versus how we were thinking in the past with, I say, their three-dimensional mindset.
You know, I absolutely agree. You and I have talked about before. I think COVID has been, well, it's both good and bad. The good part,
Sure.
though, is it's had people turn to themselves to take the time to step out of the rat race a little bit and to think
Right.
what really matters to them. And, you know, I was reading Philip Dick, one of his essays, I shared some selections with you earlier, in which he talks about chaos and change is part of life. That
Right.
even he lived next to Disneyland and was always struck by the Lincoln Simulacrum, he called it, in
Right.
the Hall of the Presidents. And
Mm-hmm.
that was an early, you know, pre that animatronic thing, but it struck
Yeah.
him as now that was going away even then when he wrote that essay. And
Right.
Disneyland changes. Well, our world changes. And what I think a lot of people are feeling chaos and disorder and fear. There's an equal
Sure.
number of people, maybe even more, saying, you know what? They're discovering things about themselves, and discomfort,
Right.
chaos is always uncomfortable. And what I'm hearing from you is you're saying the Age of Aquarius is part of that transition to a time when we stop looking to authority figures or judging our success by how well we
Right.
fit into the molds others have created for us.
Well, and like I said, we are becoming the gurus of our own lives now. We are taking this initiative to really push forward and see where we need healing, see where we need to, redo our life, or I say rediscover how we can do things better. And we're implementing a lot of these things in our lives right now. And it's happening on a fuller spectrum. You're seeing a lot of people kind of stand in a position of authority, or, like actors, actresses, people in politics, just people in general are really stepping up to the plate, and they're fighting for these freedoms that, our country really stands on. And so it's really remarkable how these people are coming out of the woodwork, and they're ready to just relinquish everything for the sake of their freedoms and, honoring that truth of what our country was based on when the Constitution was written. So it's amazing time, like I said, for us to live in. And this is the Age of Aquarius. This is where we free ourselves from all the suffering. This is where we get to see the light that's within us and start shining it on everybody else. The other great thing about the times that we're living in right now, and I know people are like cringing probably out there like, oh, what is she talking about? But COVID has done some very beautiful, remarkable things that I've been experiencing with others. And, a lot of the parents were shipping their kids off to school or shipping them off to daycare and not having any time with them. And so this COVID actually has allowed us to bring community together, bring people together, even via social media and other platforms that are out there, even our LinkedIn, Alignable, all of those, people are understanding that we are this collective, this unity, and we're coming together as a world to stand up for what's positive and what's right in our lives. Because I think in the past, we were just kind of succumbing to whatever was dished out to us. And now we're starting to rethink, how is my world and how am I going to show up for myself in this world now?
What's
And
that old
how am I
saying?
going to stay connected to others through this process as well, too?
Don't isn't there an old saying about busy hands, something about busy hands and idle minds. Well,
Oh, right.
if our hands aren't busy out there producing, those idle minds aren't idle anymore. They suddenly become activated. And I think one of the reasons we see such in the old political world, just the world in general, so many people out there talking right now, and everybody.
Right.
One of the criticisms of this age of everybody can has research, everybody has Google or Bing, everybody
Right.
has a computer in their hand.
Right.
They're ridiculed as well. Oh, now you're an expert. Everybody's an
Right.
expert. Well, actually,
Right.
flip it around. Everybody has an opportunity to be an expert, to get information. And I think again,
Right.
when people are complaining about that, I hear echoes of the old Catholic Church saying people shouldn't be able to read the Bible because they'll misinterpret it. You need an
Right.
educated classic and tell you what to think about. Well, you don't even get to read it in that case. And then Gutenberg came along with the printing press and ended all that problem. Now everybody has the Bible, right?
Right.
And they still say, well, you don't have the spiritual discernment to understand it. Well, I see the
Right.
same thing. When we people talk about politics or this particular coronavirus, that kind of stuff.
Right.
If you have an opinion that is not the one fed to you by the corporate elite, the corporate media, suddenly you're one of the peasants with a pitchfork. We got to put you down. I think what
Well,
you're talking about is people aren't listening to that. They're saying, you know what, I don't care if you ridicule me. I have
right.
information just like you do now.
Absolutely. Well, and that's the beauty of the age of Aquarius, this new time that we're entering into, is that we have the opportunity right now to delegate and to initiate better things for ourselves. And I think because we're getting this platform that everybody seems to be like, where are we headed? Where are we going? And when I talk to people about freedoms, they're like, we don't have any freedoms anymore. And I say, you know what, right here, right now, in this very present moment, you have the opportunity to create that freedom within yourself and become the guru of your life so that you can handle things in a much more ease and graceful way. Because that's what Aquarius is. It's like no more suffering, no more pain. Let's move into a higher state of consciousness so that we can bring in good. Because a lot of us been sitting back and been in this depressive mode via the state of what we're going through. And I get it. I'm living the same life as everyone else. But one thing we have to initiate with this age of Aquarius is the fact that we're able to love each other via community, and we can create those loving communities. We don't have to wait for somebody to bring that to us. We can serve humanity with our own peace and that freedom to be able to do that.
Right.
So there is this huge, huge movement around people really being in control of their lives now. And, I say there's a lot of blessings around COVID, even though it's a terrible pandemic. We look outside of the disease aspect of things and we really look at what people are doing in their lives. Parents are sitting at dinner together with their families. People are actually staying at home instead of shipping their kids off to daycares, and they get to feed their children lunch at home. We haven't been able to do that because we've been just so rushing with life that we just, here, somebody else raised my kid. Now we're getting an opportunity to be a significant person in our children's lives. For me, that is worth all of this.
Mm-hmm.
Bringing community, finding avenues for us to get together where we're safe. That's the mental space of the age of Aquarius for us, Ralph. I have to say something really quick too, because earlier we had a conversation and you said something about you watched Saturday Night Live and you saw this guy. Would you elaborate for all of us on that?
Well, so comedians, the really good comedians, they embody their time, right? Um, but so far, most of the time, I would say like George Carlin. Everybody admires George Carlin. I
Oh,
was just
geez.
watching an old, well, obviously he's been dead a little while, so all his routines are
Right.
old. But during his lifespan, this was a mature George Carlin, and he came out and he was so negative about human beings, just pounding home, well, how worthless we really are. We just made up all of our values to make ourselves feel good. Well,
Right.
there's been some comedians that are on more the, I would say, libertarian side. And Bill
Sure.
Burr, I think Bill Burr is funny as heck.
He's
And,
great.
and he says stuff that you're like, oh my God. And then when the audience doesn't react, he goes,
Right.
look how quiet it got in here. And he comes back at them, right? And it says,
Right.
well, I'm saying something that is true, but you don't, it's embarrassing. You don't want to be ridiculed for hearing it or agreeing with it.
Sure.
So he came out on Saturday Night Live about a month ago and was the guest host. And he has a very particular audience there. And he
Hmm.
didn't change his message at all. He just came on out.
Wow.
He made a series of jokes about Black Lives Matter being co-opted by white women, and just the audience was tepid, and he just doubled down. He was not afraid, and
Sure.
I just thought, well, that's the way all of us should be. We should be able to learn new things. Doesn't mean I have an opinion and therefore I'm going to hammer you with it because we're all equally expert. On the other hand, I think somebody like him stepping out into an audience that was going to be pretty hostile to him
Right.
was bold, and I sort of saw it as a like all of us. You're talking about what matters to you, trying to teach people about things you're seeing. Um,
Right.
there's a world of information, and let's say YouTube decides they don't want you to get that information out. Well, there's other platforms, and
Right.
many of the my favorite YouTube channels actively recommend those channels and say, hey, look, here's this other platform. They're not censoring it. I'll
Right.
double up my. In other words, I think technology. Yes, the great big media players can control most of the flows of info, but they don't
Uh-huh.
control it all. And those other platforms are waiting for us to get on those as well. I really do see this
Absolutely.
as an age of freedom out of chaos.
It is, Ralph. And you're so right about that because we are getting back to that notion of what our country was built on, and that was this beautiful constitution that allowed us to have these freedoms. And because we're being suppressed now we're inviting the idea of these freedoms even more, and we're trying to navigate in that direction,
Right.
not only in relationships, partnerships, but just in life in general. We're starting to see where we've been held back from a lot of the beautiful things that really are for us. And, I do a lot of spiritual teachings, and I teach classes, I do all kinds of stuff. But the one thing that always seems to be the topic of discussion is the fact of us having the ability to be who we want to be in an authentic space. And I think that this world is turning to be more truthful. There's so many people that have come out and, done some terrible things. And I think that those terrible things have set a platform for us to live in more of an authentic space of truth. And I think that we're headed in that direction with the Age of Aquarius because of the freedom that's holding us back right now. We're going to try to push more forward towards opening ourselves up to a different idea about what this life really is.
You know, I think there's a good parallel. So think about the wall that separated East from West Germany,
Oh
right?
my,
And you had
right,
that wall, and it was there was a defining barrier there, and anybody that tried to
right,
escape that wall from the East German side got shot, right? Uh,
right.
and they were pretty serious about it. But then the overwhelming desire for freedom um,
True.
overcame the state and the bullets. And you had people on the other side tearing down that wall, right? And not getting
Right.
shot by these German guards. And the people that were trying to escape were able to escape. And eventually the wall came down. And I wonder how you think about that parallel and that a lot of us right now are on the East German side of the fence, and we're saying, we're going to tear this down. And they can
Right.
be all ages, all, all generations. There's a sense that, hey, wait a minute, um, we can think for ourselves. And I wonder if you think maybe on the other side, what we thought of as, the freedom, the free world that was reaching to tear down that wall, that could be, the spiritual forces that are out there supporting us in our efforts to open our minds and live authentic selves.
Right. Well, I find it really funny that you start talking about the Berlin Wall, because in my early 20s, I actually experienced that whole energy around the tearing down of the wall, because I went to Berlin, Germany in the early 90s to live. And I walked no man's land, and I felt the energy about this. And I was seeking out people in the community to tell me about it because I wanted to know. Here I was a young woman in the United States coming to another country I'd never been to. And I was in total enamor as to why this went on so long. But one of the things that I really discovered, Ralph, that really opened my eyes up to the beauty of what happened in that country was all the beautiful love stories that conspired in the midst of all that chaos. I mean, I think they even had a movie with Scott Baio, and it was a lovely story. It was about this military man that had met this East German woman, and they fell in love, and then the wall came up, and they had this whirlwind romance. And then years later, he came to the wall, looking for this woman that he had fallen in love with. And to his dismay, she wasn't there, but this little girl peeked her head over the wall. And it just made the story just so incredible. And then I heard of other stories where families were completely ripped apart for years, and they got to have their first dinners together after that wall came down. And so in that space, I just was like, wow, there was so much beauty to be had, even in the toxicity of the separation between East Berlin and West Berlin. They made, the brokenness actually brought people back together in such an eloquent way. And I was inspired as a young woman to seek out more information and to research, like, what happened during those times. And although there was a lot of people that did lose their lives trying to escape that wall, a lot of those people were remembered for their bravery and the fact that they were trying to get back to their families for the sake of love. And so when I think of the Berlin Wall, I think of those stories, not the separation, because those people never forgot the people on the other side of the wall. They were still heartfelt, connected to those people still, even after all those years. And so for me, I had to go see it. I had to see what everybody was talking about. It was actually only 2 blocks from my house, and I went there quite a bit. And I tried to imagine as I was walking in the middle of these 2 walls, because not all of the wall had been torn down. And I started to imagine, wow, in this box over here, there was a person probably with a gun, looking for people that were trying to escape. I tried to imagine what it was like. And, all I wanted to hold on to was these beautiful stories that these lovely people in that community, had told me over dinner and coffee and long walks in the park. And I was just completely inspired when I got back to the States to live my life in a completely different way. And even if I was separated from people, that I still held them in my heart. And I regarded a lot of those stories as my own, because I took them in as a beautiful piece of even my lineage, because I am German. My father was German. So lots of inspiration there. And again, like I said earlier about the pandemic, we can choose to look into this pandemic and sit in a state of fear, or we can be like the people that were in East and West Berlin, divided by a wall, and still having love for those that they weren't able to see.
You
So
know,
we can do that too.
well, I remember at the time I was in South Korea watching the Armed
Oh,
Forces
wow.
TV, and I'm sitting there, in this base commissary base cafeteria, and we're watching the wall come down. And instead of celebrations, a lot of the military guys around me were upset. They said, "My God, why couldn't this have waited a year or two? I
Right.
would have got my retirement." There
Oh
was
my.
resentment, like this timing's horrible. I've been in the military all this time, and now they're going to want us to get out, and I won't get my full retirement. So there wasn't a joy for a lot of people. It was sort
Right.
of, you know what? I had a pretty good gig here. I knew what my place was. We've got an enemy. Now the Cold War's over. What am I going to
Right.
do? Well, isn't it the same way now when, we have this rise of individual responsibility, of people thinking for
Absolutely.
themselves,
Right.
questioning all the news, questioning authority, and we have that tide of folks who say, "You can't think for yourself. Who do you think you are? You don't have the education. You don't have the degree."
Right.
I hear the same backbiting. Instead of saying freedom's at hand for a whole group of people, it's
Right.
more like, couldn't they have waited? I love the way things were. I knew everybody on this street. Now all these new
Right.
things are happening. There's that just even everyday people are, in fact, the most everyday people just
Right.
long for routine and steady state. And it's the wrong thing to be wishing for in a time like this.
Well, and there's a lot of overcritical people because a lot of people have died from this illness, or this virus, shall I say.
Well, it's
We
not just
still,
virus. It's not just the virus, though. That's the excuse to shut things down, but
well, and,
there's all that different
I
world.
think that because of this COVID thing, that it has invited us to gain a lot more awareness. And,
Yes,
I give a lot of love and compassion to those who have families that are sick out there, families that have lost people, because that's not something, as humans, we want to have to go through or watch our families suffer through. I get it.
that's true.
I would never want any bad to be, on anybody, but we do have to gain a perspective in the midst of this chaos, and we have to honor ourselves and bring peace where there's chaos, because that's what's going to get us through this. If we're sitting behind the TV and we're watching the newspaper and we're just listening to everything and we're not questioning anything, well, then we've already set the pace for where our life is going to go.
Mm-hmm.
But for those of us that are still trying to find peace and happiness and harmony in the midst of this chaos, we're the ones that are going to push forward, and we're going to help lift up those others that can't lift themselves up. And so, like I said, that's why I'm excited about the Age of Aquarius, because all of these freedoms that were in place in our country are now starting to be redefined. Let's be honest here, Ralph. The world really needed a change. If we kept going the way that we've been and treating the earth and treating others as badly as we have been, well, we didn't even need a virus to demolish us. We could have done that very well on our own.
I totally agree. You're absolutely right. There were
So,
changes had to be made.
absolutely. One of the craziest things I think that I experience is I have some friends in China, because I have people all over the world that I talk to. And this lady, she's a nurse, and she said, "You know what? It's the most beautiful thing that I've seen." And she's in China, okay, where this all originated.
Mm-hmm.
She said, because we're not outside, because we don't have this industrial smoke going into the air and clouding up things, she said, the other day I took my lunch break and I looked up. I can't remember the last time I saw a blue sky. And I was just like, okay, she just gave me a peace within myself to understand that even in this crazy, there can still be joy and happiness. We don't have to go into those lulls. We don't have to think that our world is crumbling and that we don't have the ability to stop some of these things. You know, there was, what was it, in 2017, there was some crazy stuff going on in Egypt where people took over, you know, and I think that that is what we've been repeating through history, is that we're trying to be better. We're trying to navigate our lives better. We're trying to be better humans. But if we're stuck in this space, you know, of holding on to the toxic, we're never going to see that light at the end of the tunnel.
I agree
So
with you.
it's really in our best interest to try to find connections, to try to find love in our heart for those suffering or those that are depressed. You know, we don't see it because we're locked down, but it's happening on a big spectrum. You know, a lot of the things that we were going through, you know, domestic violence, just crime in general, you know, it's at an all-time high. We have the ability to sit back and change that. We do, you know,
So,
and
because speaking in terms of us having the ability to change that, are there any resources you think people should be looking at, such as, well, of course, your YouTube channel, but maybe take advantage of some of your services that you advertise on your website, which I'll link
right.
below on this conversation. But is there something that you would direct people to, say, a TV show or a documentary or a book or something that you have found impactful that you think would help people who are seeking to accomplish this awakening, this peace, to help them in their journey at this time?
Well, actually, it's funny you say that. Just a couple of nights ago, I decided that I was going to watch something more positive, and I found this movie, or per se documentary, and it's about the heart. I'll give you the information. You can put it in that description box below so that people can find it. But the movie was all about our intelligence of our heart, and how our heart is really the thing that regulates the mind. And then the mind brings it back to the heart and puts it out, you know, outside of the body. And this really kind of struck a thread in me, because it made me realize, because there's parts of the movie that are disheartening. I mean, there's a woman that's scared for her life, and in the midst of all of this chaos, and this was a woman that, you know, if they opened a door, she might have lost her life. And in that midst, she started praying. And not that everybody out there is going to take that space, but even if you don't pray, you go into your breath, you take your hand to your heart, and you feel. This is an energy right now that we're feeling into. This is not for us to see. We've seen enough toxic.
Mm-hmm.
But if we navigate things with our heart, and we put love into our lives where maybe we didn't before, and, you know, exercise a lot more compassion towards others by way of the heart, that's going to spell a lot for us by way of keeping peace in the midst of this crazy COVID. And, you know, another thing too is sitting still, being out in nature, looking at the sky, watching the trees move. I know it sounds funny. And I know there's some people out there that are like, I don't meditate. Well, you don't have to meditate. Just sit and be still. You know, try to find a space in your body where you can find some peace. And that's always going to be in your heart.
Shh, that's meditation, Dawn. Don't tell them that's what they're doing. You just gave away this secret.
You know, I'm going to give away a lot more secrets in the next coming months about how to keep your peace of mind and the peace within your heart. You know, we have been living in times for so long where we've talked bad to each other. We've treated each other bad. We've just overuse things. We're over consumers. We've come into this socialistic mindset where we're excessive, and we've been destroying a lot of things around us. And it's about time that we take a stand for ourselves, stand up for the freedoms of our country that our country was built on, those constitutional rights. And secondly, try to do our part to make the planet better. Even if you're walking down the street and you have a mask on, your eyes still look like they're smiling. So
Yeah.
I just want people not to forget that there's still love in the world, and that we don't have to live in this fear-based energy of the COVID, that we can make our own happiness and our own peace for others and for ourselves.
I work in a job where I deal with hundreds of people a day, retail, and it's a area that takes the whole COVID thing very seriously.
Right.
And yet I've been gratified to see that there was the initial fear, the initial panic.
Right.
But that's faded. Now everybody's wearing a mask, but
Right.
everybody's also shopping and laughing, and
Right.
also there's still that background fear. But we
Right.
talk about it. I mean, that as a source of conversation daily. One reason I like to go into work is it's a sort of a happy place, and it's a happy place because we make it that way.
And that's where everything starts from, ourselves. We have the ability to make that peace, happiness, and harmony. We do. We just have not been taught that we have the ability to do this. You know, it's almost like when you think about when you were a child, you know, when your mom said, "Oh, the stove is hot." We didn't know the stove was hot until somebody told us, right? And then we took that on as a belief system, and then we said, "I'm not going to touch that stove. It's hot because my mom said." But now I think we're getting to a place where we're like, I'm going to touch it to see if it's really hot, even though my mother said it was. That's us testing life.
You're exactly right. For me, it was a different kind of test. I had noticed that when you put your bike upside down and spun your tires very, very quickly, that the spokes disappeared. They were totally gone. And I questioned that. I said, you know, I'm like 6. I'm like, where'd the spokes go? Are they really there? So I stuck my finger right inside the spinning tire.
Oh, geez.
And it turned out the spokes were there. I just couldn't see them anymore. So I learned, you know, firsthand, just because you can't see something doesn't mean it's not there.
Absolutely. I agree with you. And that's why I'm saying we have the ability to make things in our life be real. You know, a lot of my clients say, well, who am I? And I'm like, you're exactly who you think you are. You know, so it's mind over matter. Even though we're not seeing peace and harmony and love and all this connection that I'm talking about, it's still there. It's still there. Yeah. We just have to be the better people in our lives and forgive those that have hurt us. We have to forgive ourselves for doing the things that we've done to the world. And we have to change this for the better. Recycling, wearing our masks to help others, to protect others. And
I've reduced Taco Bell consumption dramatically.
Well, you know, everything's takeout. So, you know, that's what we've resorted to. But again, like I said, even in your Taco Bell, you know, memories, those were probably great and fond, right?
I'm smiling at the memory of wonderful Taco Bell meals, but they were, and I've cut back for the good of the planet and my waist.
Well, and I love all the posts and stuff on my Facebook channel. People put the most funny things. And I think in these times, you know, for those people that are online dating, it's like, you know, before it used to be all about your status, your money, what you had. And now it's all about, oh, do you have enough toilet paper? Do you have enough hand sanitizer? And that's really the pickup lines now. So we've really changed things quite a bit, even on that, you know, aspect of things. So
I just realized that's what changed my situation. I work in a place that sells toilet paper. I thought it was me. I should have known.
Right. It's the toilet paper and the hand sanitizer, you know, and the Clorox wipes. So It's actually helped men get dates, right?
It's been great.
But all things aside, Ralph, when we think about our mornings, that's where we can start bringing the positivity, waking up and saying, yes, I'm in the midst of this pandemic. I'm in the midst of this COVID thing, but today I choose to be happy. Today I choose to be compassionate and loving towards others. Today I choose not to be fearful and to be happy. And as long as we can program, because, we've been programmed by TV, media, all that, we can program ourselves to be in a happy state of mind too. Because that happiness that we're always seeking out is really us creating that for ourselves. I think a long time ago, we used to, have this saying of like, oh, this person completes me. Well, no, you're the one that needs to complete you. You're the one that's in charge of your happiness. And if you decide this morning, when you woke up not to be happy, well, that was your choice. It's not really anybody's responsibility, because it's a huge responsibility to give to someone else to delegate your happiness. We have to create that happiness for ourselves. And we have to be the one to shift our perspective, even in the midst of this crazy pandemic.
Absolutely true. I've been reading a book called The Measure of a Man. The first part is, oh, goddess women, here's all the ways evil men, who are essentially just trolls, destroy your life. Don't let them. We finally got to the part where I think it's called for him, it's about women. So far,
Right.
it seems to be about, oh, troll-like man, here's what you shouldn't do to women. Like, is there ever a part where there's a good thing about men? But it is essentially one of the big advice to women is stop looking for others' validation of your worth and all that kind of stuff, of which you post
Absolutely.
regularly on Facebook. And it really is about essentially for both genders, I say.
Absolutely. Well,
How to define let you have to fulfill yourself before anybody else, you can make anybody else happy.
absolutely. I completely agree with you, Ralph, because it's us taking that step forward and initiating that, because it's a choice. If we decide to make a good choice, it's going to benefit us. If we decide to stay in a state of fear, well, we're going to block all those good things from coming into our life, because nothing can come in with fear. And I also think that we are coming out of a state of suppression, both male and female, and that's where this Age of Aquarius takes precedence in our lives, where we can have the ability to, set the pace in our lives to create freedoms all the way around.
Oh,
So
very good.
I'm excited for this, and it's going to be paramount to our existence here. And this change was inevitable. Even though we have to go through this pandemic thing, we didn't change. Nothing was going to get better. So
Absolutely
it's a
agree.
good thing.
Well, Dawn, this has been great. Is there any last closing thoughts you want to say about this
The
portal?
only thing that I would like to say out there is that, even though things look grim, there's a lot of rainbows on the other side of the new year. 2021 is going to be our most inspirational year ever. Even the Mayan calendar talked about this. It's a new dawning, a new world, a new way of living, and it's going to be freer than we've ever known. So I'm excited. And I think right now we all should just kind of sit back and do some journaling and see what comes up in our writings, or, just take the time to do things that we love, because that can help too.
Well, Dawn, that's excellent. I appreciate you having this conversation with me. We'll have to do it again anytime you have something you want to communicate. And I very much appreciate this. I agree with almost everything you just talked about.
Thank you, Ralph. I appreciate your time today. And, there's harmony coming. We just can't see it right now, but it's there.
Very good. All right. Bless you, Dawn. We'll talk again quite
Thank
soon.
you. Take care, Ralph.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.